Welcome to Celebration of Wisdom. Today's honoree is a lover of music. His specialty is the violin family. He has served as a choir director for Westside Vision for the World Ministries, musician for Christ the King Baptist, member of the Black String Triage and the Black Diaspora Symphony Orchestra, participated in voiceover camps for video games and book narration, and is a specialist in computer programming. His acknowledgements include recognition by Mayor Barrett for his community service, the 6th District Difference Maker Award, Milwaukee Public Schools Award for the Biannual Music Festival, earned the Unsung Hero Award from Northwest Side CDC, the Senior Legacy Award from 5 Points Neighborhood Association, and is currently working in designing the 5 Points Neighborhood Park and contributed to the newly designed Green Bay Park. He currently serves as 5 Points Neighborhood Association Vice President in charge of neighborhood improvement, beautification, and developments. We welcome VP Churchill Caruthers Jr. Welcome. Thank you for talking to me today.
Oh, sure. Thank you for having me, Abbie.
Of course. So let's start with kind of talking a little bit about what community means to you and maybe how that has changed over your life.
I think I got a kind of foundation for my view of community in my hometown where I grew up. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, and my hometown is very ethnic in terms of diversity. There are a lot of different racial makeups. I recall one of the kind of rituals, so to speak, that we had in our hometown was Ethnic Day, I think it was called, where families would make their meals that represented their ethnicity. And we would do a kind of round robin to different homes and experience the food of each family. And that would go on annually. So I'm saying all that to say that I got a kind of sense of community, meaning community means a makeup of different peoples, different ethnicities. And even in high school, the makeup of my high school was different ethnicities. So I kind of grew up thinking that's the way it was. It wasn't until I got out of my hometown and began like going to college that I got a sense that was not so much the case. So it was kind of a shock to me that didn't exist outside of my bubble, so to speak. So I was really kind of taken aback by that, and it took me a while to get used to that. But hopefully that it kind of explains my sense of community to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What has inspired you to be so involved in the community as well? Like, it's definitely not something everybody does. So if you want to talk a little bit about what work you do in the community and kind of how you got there.
Sure. Actually, Sai kind of recruited me. I was a new neighbor, and she was passing out flyers at the time, I think. And she kind of encouraged me to start coming to the community meetings. And Sai, in her own special ways, well, let me just say it like it is. She's rather pushy in terms of getting people involved. I don't know if you've experienced that already, but so she kind of edged me into being involved in the association meetings, 5 Point neighborhood association meetings, and my yearnings for community ever since that that time I just talked about has always been kind of a part of me anyway. So I felt the need to get involved and do what I can to express myself in terms of helping the community. So that's how I got involved. Does that answer it?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay, great.
How do you deal with change in your life?
Oh, I never thought about it. I suppose I've gotten better at it over time. I think there were times when I kind of thought about time is running out, especially as I grow older. I had a kind of trepidation about time is running out on me, and I haven't accomplished the things that I want to accomplish. And I'm kind of feeling that less and less. There's still part of it where I feel that way, but I think I'm more inclined to just deal with what I have left in terms of my internal resources and what I become. I think it's more powerful for me to deal with what I have left in a more optimum or efficient way in terms of in this life that I have left, how can I best contribute based on where I am right now, as opposed to regrets about what I have not done. It's more, and I find myself doing that more and more. Just using what I have and optimizing what I have already and using that to the best way possible for the remainder of my life.
That's great. What are some of the biggest changes you've either seen in the world or even just experienced in your personal life? And like, kind of how did you deal with them, or how do you think they affect you?
Getting back to your first question, where my community sense was like in a bubble. There were all these ethnicities, and I'm sure there were conflicts even then, but I think it was to a lesser degree that I experienced polarization, like it exists now. There's so many pockets where never the twain shall meet, so to speak, and that's been kind of difficult for me because I didn't grow up that way. I embraced all cultures. My mother was a school teacher, by the way, and she would have these young teachers come by and even spend the night. And a lot of these teachers were like different races. So even that kind of reinforced my sense of we are all in this together, so to speak. And as I grew older and went on to college, like I was telling you before, I've experienced this, and it's even more today. This polarization, where people don't trust each other, races don't trust each other. There's conflict, and I guess I'm kind of rambling on and on, but hopefully you get my sense of frustration with that. It's just so direly different from the way I grew up, and the way I experienced people. Even in racial terms, I didn't really experience racism. I didn't even know, and I know that sounds odd being a Black man, but when I was younger, I didn't get a sense of black and white.
Mm.
Like I did when I finally got out of Gary, Indiana, and went on to college. Um, uh, my college experience was in Nashville, Tennessee, where there were a lot of the sit-ins. I don't know if you're familiar with the sit-in area where
Oh, yes. Yep.
yeah, that was a lot. Matter of fact, my college, Fisk University, was kind of the hub of student sit-in demonstrations. A lot of students from my college. I didn't participate because I didn't understand it at the time. I was totally ignorant about about conflicts and race relations. And it's strange that I should say that right now, but and people look at me kind of funny when, how can that be true? You're not telling the truth, I'm actually telling the truth. I didn't understand conflicts in race relations until I got out of high school and went on to college and got in Nashville, Tennessee, and experienced the sit-ins. And when I had problems going downtown Nashville and tried to enter a restaurant, and I was confronted by not being able to sit at a counter, that kind of thing. It was all kind of new to me. I kind of rambled on and on to answer your question. Sorry.
No, that was great. That was awesome. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think sometimes you don't realize, and it's like one of those, like, you don't know what you have until it's gone kind of things, where you don't realize the kind of world you are in. And then,
Yeah, exactly.
What are, kind of speaking to that too, like, what would you say are some experiences you've had during your life that you've really carried with you, like something that's been like really impactful, and like, why were they so impactful? Like, what did you learn from them?
Let's see. I guess my education would be one. So let me start with that one, and as I talk, maybe I'll think of some others. Mm-hmm. These are, you never kind of sit down and sum up things for yourself. So this is kind of interesting interaction with you. That's causing me to think about my life in certain ways. So my education, like I said, I went off to school, Nashville, Tennessee, and my program was mathematics. I majored in math. It was profound for me in that I got it's always a profound experience. I'm sure it's for you too, as you kind of go through school and learn about things, especially the things that you're interested in. I don't know what your major is, but that was profound for me in that I was learning about a subject that I really kind of always had a great interest in, even from high school. So I got a chance to get a degree in it, but I had these kind of ancillary experiences along with getting my degree. Number one, that I've already talked about, experiencing what it means to be a Black man and have all the turmoil about race. I was learning about that. I even got a chance to, Fisk had a program called where you could go off to another school and kind of have a year or two at learning from in a different program at another school. So I got a chance to go to Dartmouth. I don't know if you're familiar with Dartmouth College.
Yeah, my aunt actually went there.
Yeah. So I had a chance to go to Dartmouth College, and even then, there weren't many Black students at the time, and it was Dartmouth is it was all male then, but I think Dartmouth has what do you call it, where you have males and females?
Co-ed.
Co-ed, yeah. It's co-ed now, but at the time, Dartmouth was an all-male school, and there were some experiences that weren't pleasant at the time, because I had I had really had a kind of high esteem, or looked highly on a school that, one of the great schools in America. This was a you know kind of lost for word. Dartmouth is one of the early schools in America that was established by, the United States government. And it's one of the land grant schools, yeah. And it's very esteemed and very, very highly thought of, along with Yale and Carnegie, and it's one of those kind of schools. So I was appalled to experience racism because I had this convoluted thought that you don't experience those kind of things at an Ivy League school, So I had some negative experiences in terms of Black and relating to some of the white students. But on the other hand, I got a really good education in mathematics, on a high level. So I had these two experiences. On the one hand, one was negative, but on the other hand, in terms of learning and experiencing in Ivy League school, I can't say enough about the experience I had in learning from some of the great teachers, some of the greatest math teachers. So that was a good experience. So education, repeat your question again. I've kind of
just some experiences that you've had that you feel like you've sort of like carried with you, have affected you in long term, and like also how did they affect you, or like what did you learn from them?
Oh, okay, yeah. So education, those two facets of education, and then after I graduated, I was able to get a job with it was called Exxon at the time. I got a chance to work as a computer programmer in the IT staff, and that was interesting. I had to move from Tennessee to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, at the time. So I was single at the time, and I moved there. Ultimately, I met my ex-wife and started a family. But initially, when I got there, and here again, I guess race relations have always been kind of a facet that's been a part of my life that has made an impression on me. Even in Baton Rouge, race relations were not the greatest. I've had some experiences there that weren't pleasant at all. For example, moving ahead, maybe after 2 or 3 years I had been there, I got married, and then my ex-wife and I, this was my first wife, ex-wife and I, my wife then, I'll put it that way, moved into an apartment, and things started happening. Every morning when I woke up, my car was just strewn with eggs. And it's very hot down there, so the eggs were like baked into the car by the time I got up. So those kind of experience, and this happened maybe about 4 times. So I was late for work, cleaning off my car, and then I never found out who was doing it. But this happened to about like 4 mornings in a row, and finally we just moved away from there. But those kind of negative experiences. On the other hand, and this has been the thing in my life, I had these negative experiences, but kind of underneath all of that, there were other experiences that kind of propelled me to the next level. And, I learned a lot about computer programming, but in spite of those negative experiences, and there were others in Baton Rouge where the race relations were negative experiences. But even with that, I learned a lot about developing computer programs, even to the extent that I was able to ultimately move out of Baton Rouge and move to Milwaukee, and I got a job in here again in IT, and I was a computer programmer. And at that point, after learning in Baton Rouge, I was able to do programming on a very high level. So my experiences were negative, so to speak, in race relations. But on the other hand, I was able to learn a lot. So can't think of anything else. Maybe as we go along, I'll think of something else. Maybe go to your next question.
Yeah, you can talk about whatever you like. Don't worry if you feel like you're going on a tangent or anything. It's all great. So, what advice would you give to someone who is going through something difficult or like a hard time in their life? So what kind of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I can speak to this. Even looking at the situation in Baton Rouge, I was really yearning to get away from there, because it was frustrating to me to experience these negative kind of experiences with race relations, and I think it even soured my perspective on things, to the extent that maybe a lot of times I wasn't pleasant to be around. And when I look back on it, because I was so consumed with unhappiness about the situation that I even failed to see, like I mentioned before, how powerful my learning about computers was at the time. So I've learned from that, in that even in the midst of kind of problematic experiences, if you take the time and to consider the more positive parts of an experience, then you're the better for it in terms of even your well-being, because I was not a healthy person at the time either. I think I was so worried about the problems and the negative outlooks that my health wasn't the best. So I've learned that, and I'm not saying it's easy, but even in the midst of dark times, if you look on the the brighter side of things, you'll be the better for it in the long run. Uh, obviously, you have to get out of dark spaces, but the strategy is to get as much as you can while you're there before moving on, while working on trying to get out of it. Does that all make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it even parallels now. Like I was speaking to your question, even now, there's a similarity in terms of what you have left, the resources that you've been able to accumulate for now, instead of looking at what you've lost. What you have now is the more powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you should look to instead of dwelling on what you've lost or what's defeating you at the time. So it kind of parallels what I'm doing now. I'm far better off than those negative experiences. I don't have those anymore so much, but I'm consumed with thinking about what I have left. Not consumed. I was consumed about it, but I'm more prone to think about how can I utilize what's in me right now to the extent that it propels me forward to the best of my ability. And yeah, and if I had had that kind of thought, even in Baton Rouge, when I was overwhelmed with all those negative experiences, I would have been far better.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. How do you feel like, because of dealing with all the different, like when you were younger, with things like you talked a lot about, like learning how to deal with race and things like that, like how do you feel like you learned how to, like, you've touched on this a little bit, like adjust your life in different ways and also just stay so like kind and compassionate at the same time?
Yeah, I think it's critical that you do that. I believe I just had these models. My mother being the greatest one. Like I said, she would have all these younger teachers really loved my mom, I guess, and they wanted to be around her. And she was a great example to them, I guess. And she would have them over, and they would end up spending the night and so on. So my mother is the great example for me in terms of looking past. How should I say it? Looking past who we are. I'm not so much forgetting who we are, but the greater picture is how we can build together. And that was my mom example. She was the great example for that, because I mean, she had a lot of negative experiences too in terms of race, but she was just a powerful example for me. And I had a younger brother, me and my younger brother, in terms of looking past race and just taking advantage of opportunities in spite of the racial outlook. I tell you, here's another example that you asked about earlier, and it kind of fits into the question you're asking right now. When we were younger, my brother and I were younger. I was about maybe 14. Yeah, 14. Living in Gary, Indiana. My mother decided to take a road trip to Mexico City. Mm-hmm. My mother was a single parent. My parents were divorced when I was younger. So my mother was raising my brother and I. But my mother gets this idea of going down to Mexico City, driving all the way down there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's over, wow, how many miles? That's over 1,000 some miles.
Yeah.
She decided to drive herself and these two kids on her own down to Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an experience. I mean, number one, going through all the different cities. And at the time, we had to be careful because of race relations. We couldn't stay in certain hotels, obviously, because of problems with that. So there were a lot of times we spent the night in the car, but just all those miles and then my mother also spoke different languages. That was another example for me. She spoke German, she spoke French, Spanish, and the what do they call them? The Romance languages. But anyway, her schooling, she got a master's in teaching and speaking those languages. So she was able to speak Spanish very well. So when we got down there, I saw her interactions with, speaking Spanish, and that it's just all that was a great example for me, pushing past who you are and taking on the challenge in spite of how dangerous it was racially to go down, a single woman, taking the risk with two kids on her own. In spite of that kind of journey, that was a great example for me. I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm kind of babbling on and on.
Oh no, you're great.
But and it's hard to kind of relate that to somebody else. I hope I'm doing an okay job about that, but I have all these feelings inside of how I felt about that. And those experiences are hard for me to kind of reveal in a way that makes sense to people, but hopefully I'm getting across to you. It's just that was a great example for me in terms of just pushing past all the ugliness in spite of what might happen to you. And it pales in relationship to just doing it and experiencing it and getting the best out of it. Just do it in spite of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe to shift gears a little bit. So obviously music seems to be very important to you. Has it always been a big part of your life, or has it been something that's like kind of grown over the years? And also just kind of want to talk about what you do through music. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's both. So my mother played the violin, and she had this violin from high school. I was very young then. I was maybe a toddler, and I started tinkering around with it because I found it one day and fell in love with it, even at a young age. I didn't take lessons until later, but she saw my interest in it, and she got me lessons in the violin. So at about 13 or 14, I took lessons and played it for a while, learned how to play it. And in my early 20s, I stopped playing it. I still had an interest. I would go back to it now and then, but I kind of stopped playing it on a regular level. But then maybe when I got back into my 30s, I started really getting interested in it again. I joined groups took lessons, and from my 30s on, even today, I still play it. Over time, I've gotten better at it. I play it decently now. There, like anything else, the more you practice, and at this level, I really practice about every day. But I consider myself a pretty good player. But like anything else, you want to do even more than that. You want to really get, at least for me, I really want to get powerful on it. And I just love the instrument. Matter of fact, I love the string family. At one point, I was teaching in NPS, the violin family, cello, bass. So I learned to play those other instruments, but and viola. But violin is my primary instrument. And I've continued to play it. I play with a group now, Black Diaspora Orchestra, as well as a kind of a specialized group that goes out and plays after tragedies, just to heal families. So that's the other group. That one's a little harder for me to play in because obviously the circumstances, but I'm a part of that group. We go out and play after us in a sense of violence, and to witness to families, to soothe them musically. So, but to answer your question, I just love the way music can, here again, cut across all boundaries and ethnicities. And for that reason, I love music from all cultures. Yeah, I guess that's all I can say about that. I try my best to incorporate music from different genres, different ethnicities. I just love music from different countries. Mm-hmm. I was that way even as a kid. I really love listening to different national folk songs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I was in band my whole life.
Oh, were you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What did you play?
Clarinet was my main instrument, but I was in the like reed family. So saxophone too and stuff. But yeah, so I totally understand where you're coming from with all the different things with music and stuff too. And I know I also was mentioned that you like are part of like the beautification, like leadership kind of stuff for the community, like, and gardening and things like that. Like, what are those kind of things? Like, what is the importance of that to you? And also, like, why do you think it's so important?
There's so many things that we overlook in terms of what God can give us. I'm a religious man, so I'm not trying to be offensive if you're not.
You're good.
There's so many things that we can overlook that are simple and God provides for us. And I find it necessary to not overlook those things and make it something that people can see and say to themselves, well, this is something that nature already provides, and it's a God-given thing, and it's beautiful, and all we have to do is cultivate it and maintain it, and it's that simple. It's not a lot to fuss over. Yeah, we have to spend the time to take care of it, but like anything else, the best things are people that do the best for taking care of it. If you do your best in taking care of it, then it'll do its best in showing you how beautiful it can be. I find that to be even true of music. The more you cultivate it, and the more you experience being really technically good at it, the more it'll expose itself to be really beautiful. Mm-hmm. So even in terms of nature, I like to show in the space that we have, the community park that we have. That's why I'm really interested in landscaping and beauty, because it's just a simple thing. All you have to do is plant the seed or cultivate the ground, and it's beautiful. Everybody can see it, and everybody can partake in it. Everybody can be a part of it. I don't know if that makes, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Kind of, it's like, generally speaking, maybe not necessarily just about nature and stuff, but what do you think younger people can do to like help in their communities, or like to build community, or just kind of in general in the world? Like, what do you think there's things that young people could do to help others, or just sort of generally speaking, if that makes sense?
To me, the important thing these days are the conversations that kind of surpass in words. There's so much polarity these days. You know, people isolated in their own spaces. I think it's important for all of us, especially young people, to have the conversations that kind of express the need to go beyond just being in your own space. Let me phrase that a little differently, because I know that's kind of jumbled. What I'm trying to say is it's important that we have conversations, number one, but number two, those conversations go beyond just our own interest, but the interest of the person that you're talking to. You know, all the while that you're talking to them, be in their shoes, so to speak. Be in their ethnicity, be in their, as best you can. You can't always do that because you don't know who they are or what experiences they have, but you can get a glimpse of who they are as you talk to them. You know, embrace what they're all about, instead of focusing so much on who you are and what you're saying to them. Try in your conversation to make it obvious that you are totally interested in the well-being of that person that you're talking to. You know, in other words, you are overwhelmed with wanting to know all about them. That's how I view it. Because, you know, a good example of that is, for me, is what's going on in Ukraine right now. Mm-hmm. Here's a country that ethnically is made up of like Russians and Ukrainians. I mean, that's been the makeup of the Ukraine for ages. But they've never, when I say they, to a large extent, the Russians that exist in Ukraine have never really embraced the Ukrainians to the extent that they've had. There are a lot of them have, but overall, I think the native Russians in Ukraine have never embraced the Ukrainians. And that's been the problem all along.
Mhm.
And they never kind of bridged that gap of languages and ethnicity to the extent that it's always been kind of boiling and boiling and boiling to the point that the Russian side of it wanted to overthrow the Ukrainian side of it. And I think that's the example that I'm talking about. We need conversations, even in coming back over here to in the US, the black and white conversations have never been the kind of conversations that embraced both sides. And we need that.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. What kind of like in general would be some other advice you give to young people just about life? It's very, I mean, that's very vague, but any other advice that you would give to just anyone, not even if they're like struggling with something, but just as like a life lesson kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the best advice would be what I've learned from my own experiences. I told you before that I picked up the violin when I was very young,
Mhm.
and I had a lot of lessons. And then I got kind of frustrated and disappointed for a number of reasons. A lot of it had to do with it kind of got discouraged because in my circle of friends, there were not a lot of people that embraced like classical music, for example, and I don't know, yeah, I probably stereotypical kind of stuff, black man playing the violin. But anyway, I got kind of frustrated with that and disappointed with that, and so I dropped. And I should never have done this. In spite of that kind of disappointment in friends and circles, I should never have discontinued my interest in the violin. I should have kept it up. So, like I told you before, I kind of stopped playing for a while because of those reasons, and then I got the courage to pick it up again. But can you imagine? I'm a pretty good player, and that's not bragging. I know I'm a pretty good player, but I would be far more advanced today had I not dropped it and continued my dream about playing it and uh, my whole enthusiasm for the violin should not have been crushed because people didn't look at me in a certain way that I wanted them to. In other words, what I'm trying to say is just do your dream, do what's interested in you in spite of it, and don't let anything crush that dream. Move forward with it in spite of.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about that we didn't touch on yet?
No, I just, I'm not the greatest for expressing myself. I just hope I provided some kind of continuity here that.
Yeah, no, you've been great. This has been awesome. Yeah, and I definitely feel like with like I said, I played the clarinet and like I actually started as a music major in college and then I
Oh,
switched paths, but um it's definitely something that like it saying like even just saying like getting the courage uh to start again because I didn't play for a few years as well and I haven't quite picked it back up again yet, but it's definitely something that's really important. and especially because it meant so much to me at one time.
Oh, yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Just dabble back into it with all the gusto that you can.
I will, definitely. I don't know if you'd like to play anything. You totally don't have to, but right now, if you'd like to play anything for us.
Well, nah.
That's okay.
I would love to, but I like to warm up first, and I haven't had a chance to do that. So
you're good. You're good. All good. Great.
Thanks for asking, though.
Yeah, of course. Sai, is there anything else you'd like us to?
No, thanks for this experience, Abbie.
Of course.
Of course. This summing up, there's something to it, you know. Mm-hmm. As you sum up things, you kind of get a perspective. So I appreciate this. Progress. It's like you got someone else chiming in here.
We're good.
So my time is up, I guess.
No, I told her to give us a few more minutes. I was trying to tell her give us a few more minutes. So it was good that pause is in there because you'll be able to edit that piece out right there. But if you could, even though you talk about my pushiness, I'm gonna push again. If you could, there was something.
You were listening in?
I told you I was here, but I was hidden.
Hey,
you talking about me? You ain't supposed to put me out there. You ain't supposed to throw me out there like that.
That's a criminal offense, Si.
Well, did I not clearly say I'm gonna be on here? He just didn't listen. Okay, so if you could, just you can keep part of that, but take off. If you can talk about, switch it where it talks about, the persistence of or something like that, like people working to get you involved, because obviously no matter how pushy you are to people, if they're not interested, they're just not going to come. So, after receiving a few of the flyers or after us, talking to you a little bit. So really in terms of that, you can say, yeah, try to keep me out of it. We want the focus. The thing is we want to focus on you and not you need to focus on Si. So I think the question was, what got you involved in community? So you can talk about a neighbor came along and passed out a flyer, talked about the community, but then talk about you yourself, just a minute or two of how that got you into it. And then she can always go back and kind of spice it, because you don't want the emphasis to be on me. We're emphasizing you, not me. Does that make any sense to you?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll just kind of rewind and just, you don't have to do the whole question because you may not remember the whole answer, but at least, what got you involved in, I think the question was, what got you involved in community? Okay. So you can ask that, and then whatever piece is that from the beginning part, the first part, and then whatever he adds now, but just eliminate me because the focus is not me. The focus is you. I bet you happy on that one. Hey. Yeah, he's gonna talk about me later. I'm going back on.
Okay. Okay. So what got you interested in working in the community, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it goes back to that original question that you asked me about how was it in my youth, and as I was explaining, my experience. Are you still there, Abbie?
Yep.
Oh, okay. My experience in my youth was pretty much exposures to different ethnicities. I told you about how we had those annual things where each household would make their favorite ethnic dish, and we could go around from house to house and experience. So I had this inside of me, this community kind of thing going on inside of me anyway. And I think it's always been a part of me. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a natural outgrowth of that, wanting to continue that even in my adulthood, that I got involved in community work later on, as an expression of what I had in my youth. So I wanted to continue that sense of being a part of the world, so to speak, being a part of the larger picture of humanity, so to speak. So in that sense, I got involved. It was kind of unconscious, I wasn't saying to myself, Churchill, you need to really be part of the ethnic going on. It wasn't that at all. It was just what has always been kind of fermenting inside of me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hope that explains it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
you just do your conclusion. Thank you. I'm sorry. Anything else, Churchill?
nope.
Okay, so you just do your conclusion. I'll bounce out. Do your conclusion. I'll bounce back on, and then.
What does she mean by conclusion?
I think just sort of me.
Okay.
Yeah. So, thank you so much for talking.
Oh, thank you, Abbie. I enjoyed talking with you. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, this has been great, and I really appreciate just learning and knowing all that you've been doing for the community, and I think it's great that you're willing to share it with so many people. So thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.